So I assume most of you guys remember Hideo Kojima's little cyberpunk masterpiece. Well, I know I sure as hell do. There was just something about this celebration of American sci-fi and anime style that worked its way right into the hearts of what turned out to be a pretty sizable cult following. And I'm sure all of us at some point have uttered something along the lines of, "Man, I wish Kojima would make a new cyberpunk-inspired adventure game." Well, it seems the good people at Midboss have beaten him to the punch. But can a modern title still exist within the framework of an old text-based adventure game? Can pixels, neon, and style make up for a lack of 3D levels and bloom lighting? Well, I think we're about to find out. I'm Jared, and this is Trash Classics. Coming off the back of a modern re-emergence of 80s cyberpunk-influenced games, ROM hit the scene with a pretty big bang. And not only because the Kickstarter was crazy successful, but it was also one of the few games that didn't find its way into the news for sleazy practices or outright theft of money provided by backers. But the important question is, did the game deliver on $64,000 worth of hopes and dreams? Well, let's find out. The year is 2064, and thanks to rampant technological achievements, society has developed a habit of messing with the human form. Whether it's cybernetic implants or outright tinkering with the human genome, people have begun to slip further and further away from what it means to be human. As can be expected from this type of story, there are megalithic corporations pulling in profits and rebel groups opposed to the idea of altering the human form.
Organizations, like the Human Revolution, seek to slow the relentless pace of progress.
In between all this sits you, or at least the game's version of you, a freelance internet journalist who has just been thrown into the middle of a strange kidnapping after the world's first sentient robot shows up at your doorstep. Getting to the bottom of this little mystery takes you through the neon-clad city of Neo San Francisco, and I'll be damned if it didn't hook me in from the very beginning. And the biggest reason for this is some really great writing. Whether it's a description of a random object or a discussion with another character, the writing has a high level of authenticity and does a great job at portraying the character traits that they're trying to get across. As for gameplay, the general adventure game outline is pretty well represented here, but with the added mechanics seen in text-based games like Snatcher and Cobra. So you'll be hunting the environment for things to examine, people to talk to, and items to put in your inventory, but you'll also be given a choice between several conversation options, and in ROM it seems to play more of a role in the character you want to be, and less of the tried and true ask each question twice methods seen in games like Snatcher and Police Knots. But let's get down to the real spectacle here, and that is the game's amazing pixel art. If we're judging on a purely graphical level, then most of you probably realize that ROM looks like a really sharp version of what you might find in a Game Boy Advance title. But if we're judging it on its ability to not only replicate the look of the games that inspired it, but also its use of pixel art to craft a fully realized and stylish world, ROM passes with flying colors. I mean, I haven't seen a better use of modern pixel-based graphics ever. Every character is amazingly stylized and fits the look of the late 80s, early 90s cyberpunk anime that I grew up on. Everything from the game's environments to the menus and even its font is designed specifically for nostalgia. And the good news is, it's pulled off to such a talented degree that it never feels cheap. But this game is not without its flaws, and as a matter of fact, there are two glaring issues that very well may keep some of you away. First and least importantly, even though I'm a huge fan of the 2D pixel art on display here, I can admit that the low resolution can make a lot of scenes look like a jumbled mess if you happen to be really close to a 1080p display. This effect carries over to the text when it's highlighted, becoming very hard to read. On the small screen of the PS Vita or in windowed mode on a PC, this becomes a non-issue, however. Now the last, and for me, the most important issue that can arise is that this is a quote-unquote queer-inclusive game. And on paper, what this is supposed to mean is that someone who doesn't conform to traditional genders or sexual preferences can find characters to rally behind in this game. And in a sense, that's exactly how it is. But what this equates to in the real world is that almost every single character in the game is either gay, lesbian, trans, or a robot. Now, right off the bat, there's nothing wrong with creating characters that don't conform to societal norms. As a matter of fact, I'm a fan of Japanese RPGs, so it's not at all uncommon for me to see minorities in my games. But there's a fine line between inclusion and pandering. For me, when preferred pronouns are included, the scales start to tip. Whether or not this game panders to its intended audience is a very subjective question and will probably change from person to person. But I will say that it's very easy to play through this game and really enjoy the characters without being a member of their respective minority group. I myself really love the badass, no-nonsense lesbian cop Lexi. The takeaway here is that Read Only Memories is an amazing trip back to the early 90s cyberpunk scene, and on top of that, it's also a really solid game with a truly interesting story. Those of you who don't like the adventure game format or the inclusion of social justice into your games may be turned off at first, but it's rare to see games like this come around, and in my opinion, it's definitely a bridge worth crossing. With top-notch pixel art, a great little cyberpunk story, and let's face it, the full force of nostalgia on its side, Read Only Memories has been an absolute joy. And having said that, I really need to jack into the meshnet, guys. I gotta keep an eye on some security nodes, and while I'm at it, tag this game as a trashed classic. What's up, guys? Thanks for checking out another episode of Trash Classics. If you like adventure games with a cyberpunk twist, well, you're shit out of luck, because I haven't reviewed any other ones, but I have included a couple of other games that may have flown under your radar. And if you're new around here, maybe try clicking that subscribe button to know when more episodes hit them internets.